Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling the Territories podcast. Tonight, we're going to talk about tag teams that held championships in multiple organizations. So sit back, relax. I hope you enjoy it. So, tonight, I want to talk about tag teams that held championships in multiple organizations. So, we're going to get started off with one of the most decorated tag teams in professional wrestling history, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. Okay, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, one of the most decorated tag teams in professional wrestling history. Tag teams, championships all over the place. They got their start early on, and in 1984, they were in Georgia and they were the national tag team champions and held those three times. Those championships in the Georgia, that was before even the face paint time, but that was early on in their career. There were heels, and they uh, they didn't really gel with the fans quite yet, but later on they would. They would move over to the AWA and become the AWA World Tag Team Champions. And in this time frame, they're still kind of heels, but they're starting to go face, and they start to have a feud with Nikita Koloff and Ivan Koloff. So as the NWA World Tag Team Champions and the AWA World Tag Team Champions, those went back and forth. The Road Warriors come over to Jim Crockett Promotions after losing the AWA Tag Team belts. You don't really see them titles until around, I guess 87. They're the International Tag Team Champions, the NWA International Tag Team Champions, and they won them in Japan through the All Japan Pro Wrestling. And although you never seen them defend those tag team championships, they sure as heck had them on them quite a bit. But it was just never something that Jim Crockett ever showed on TV, a defense. You would see them with the titles, but never a defense. They would also team with Dusty Rhodes and become the World Six Man Tag Team Champions. They would then also team with Tenru, who would take Dusty's place as a champion when they kicked Dusty out and turned on Sting, and that big headache that happened back then. It didn't work out. Fans were still too much involved in the Road Warriors and loved them too much for them to just, be heels. So that didn't work out so well for them. They would go on to become the NWA World Tag Team Champions. They held the Crockett Cup as well, although that's not a championship title, it's still a title to have. They'd move over to the WWF and become World Tag Team Champions there. And then other organizations that I don't really know a lot about, but they've held tag team titles. The International Wrestling Superstars, the IWS, they were tag team champions. The I Generation Superstars of Wrestling tag team champions three times, and the IPW tag team champions once. But those are championships I don't know much about. I don't even know really the organizations, but Road Warriors is one of the most decorated tag teams in professional wrestling. Okay, so our next tag team is Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard. They got put together kind of interestingly because what happened was Arn Anderson had been teaming with Ole Anderson. They've been members of the Horsemen. And of course, Tully and Arn had teamed throughout the early days of the Horsemen. But the fact of the matter is, when they threw Ole out of the Horsemen, Lex Luger came in, and about halfway through the summer of '87, they become a tag team in challenging the Rock and Roll Express for the World Tag Team Championships, in which they were successful in doing. Controversial, but they won the World Tag Team titles from Rock and Roll Express. They would go on to have another feud with Barry Windham and Lex Luger later on, where they would lose and then regain the titles. They would drop them to the Midnight Express and leave and go to the WWF, where they would become part of the Heenan family and become the WWF World Tag Team Champions. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, NWA and WWF World Tag Team Champions. All right, this next one's going to take a little time because I got to do a little explaining, and then we'll look at their championship accomplishments. So what we're going to do is take a look at the versions of the Midnight Express that involve Bobby Eaton and Jim Cornette. So we're going to look at Condrey and we're going to look at Lane and in those versions of the Midnight Express and their tag team title runs. Now, we're going to look at the Condrey Eaton tag team first. So Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, they were the All Star Wrestling tag team champions. They were 7-time tag team champions there. International Wrestling Cartel, 10 times there. It's a lot of championship runs there. And so they're most noted for their runs with the Mid South and Jim Crockett promotions, but we'll get to those in just a minute because there's other tag team titles that they held too along the way, and then we'll get into the Crockett Mid South tag team, and then so they held the NWA Bluegrass Tag Team Championships 10 times, the NWA Rocky Top Tag Team Championships 19 times. This is unbelievable, their accomplishments. They were East Tennessee Tag Team Champions 1 time, the Universal Championship Wrestling Tag Team Champions 2 times, World Class Wrestling NWA American Tag Team Champions once. And then you go back to the Crockett promotion and the Mid South. Remember, Mid South, there were 2 times Mid South Tag Team Champions. And then they were NWA World Tag Team Champions with the Crockett promotion 1 time. And remember, this is the Condrey Eaton. So I don't get a lot of things confused here. We can get into that. There was a different incarnations of the Midnight Express, but again, we're just covering the Eaton and Lane Eaton Condrey. Ooh, this gets confusing. But okay, so we're going to look at Stan Lane's version of the Midnight Express with Bobby Eaton. And basically, in this tag team, they only held the Jim Crockett promotions. So there were 3 times United States Tag Team Champions and 1 time World Tag Team Champions, and the only team to ever hold the U.S. World Tag Team Championships at the same time. I do know that there was the Steiner brothers who handled them too, but I think they were kind of considered the WCW at that time. So we're going to say that they were the only ones, the NWA actual Jim Crockett promotion version of the U.S. and World Tag Team Championships. The Midnight Express, and here's something, a little tidbit of for you. Of course, you may remember Paulie Dangerously had a version called the original Midnight Express, which was Dennis Condrey and Randy Rhoads. But let me just go through the list of people who were members of the Midnight Express that we don't think about. So check this out. Excuse me. Dennis Condrey, Randy Rhoads, and so Dennis Condrey from 80 to 89, and then 2004 to 2011. Randy Rhoads from 80 to 83, 87 to 89, and 2004 to 2006. Norval Austin, 81 to 83, and then again in 2004. Ron Starr, 1983. This one will blow your mind. The Honky Tonk Man in 1983 was a member of the Midnight Express. I never knew. The Norval Austin I'd heard of, Ron Starr I'd heard of, but I never knew the Honky Tonk Man was a member of the Midnight Express back in 1983. Had no idea. Then you had Bobby Eaton from 83 to 90, and then 2002 to 2011. Stan Lane from 87 to 90, and then again from 2005 to 2010. Then these were just horrible. Midnight Express, which was Bart Gunn and Bob Holly. Horrible. That was in 1998. Just please forget that. Don't ever think about those versions of the Midnight Express because they were awful. They were absolutely just awful. And then Ricky Nelson from 2002 to 2005. Jim Cornette, manager from 83 to 90, then 98. Then he wants to hate. I think he hated that run in 98 as well. 2004 to 2010, that's when they were making independent moves around, just going to different independent circuit. So all those in 2000 were independent circuit, just here and there type situations. And Paul E. Dangerously, the original Midnight Express from 87 to 89. But you got to believe the Midnight Express is one of the most decorated tag teams in professional wrestling as well. Okay, so we're going to end the podcast on this version. I'll do a part 2 and probably a part 3 as I talk about doing occasionally, multiple parts. But this one will be the final part of this particular podcast. And we're going to end it with the Rock and Roll Express. And man, do they have a lot of championships under their belt as well. And we're going to take a look at who they wrestled for and the tag team titles they had. So we'll take a look at the Appalachia Mountain Wrestling. They were the AMW Tag Team Champions once. Continental Wrestling Association. So this covered 3 different ones. You had the AWA Southern Tag Team Championships twice. They had the CWA Tag Team titles once, and the CWA World Tag Team titles once. They also, let's see, they had the Korean Pro Wrestling Association, the NWA tag team titles through them. The Mid-South Wrestling Association, the Mid-South Tag Team Champions 3 times. Big battles again, we always talk about with the Midnight Express. They had the NWA Jim Crockett Promotions tag team titles, the World Tag Team titles 4 times. The National Wrestling Alliance World Tag Team titles 2 times. Now, this is just the overall NWA later on past the Jim Crockett days. They did have Mid-Atlantic Tag Team Championships 3 times. Again, this is not Jim Crockett Promotions. The NWA Southwest Tag Team titles, the World Tag Team titles there 1 time. NWA Wildside, the NWA Wildside Tag Team Championships 1 time. They had the Mid-South Wrestling Association Tag Team titles. The PWA Tag Team Championships 1 time. And it just keeps going on. These guys have had a lot of accomplishments in tag teams, all these Pro Wrestling Illustrated awards and things like that. The Rocket City Wrestling Championship Tag Team titles, the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team titles 10 times. That's the titles they held the most. If y'all remember the Smoky Mountain Wrestling, that was a part of the, Jim Cornette and all those guys back in the early 90s. Traditional Championship Wrestling Tag Team Champions once. Ultimate Championship Wrestling UCW Tag Team titles once. The USWA Tag Team Championships twice. They had NWA World Tag Team Champions in that USWA Association 1 time. I didn't remember that one, but a lot of these I didn't know, like the UPW Tag Team Champions once. The Viral Pro Wrestling VPW Tag Team Champions. World of Wrestling Tag Team Championships once. So these guys have held tag team titles all over the place. And there was a version that they had in the WWF when the WWF had the NWA as well. That was not a real good, fun time for professional wrestling, the NWA. But either way, they did have those tag team titles for a bit. Smoky Mountain Wrestling, they'll be remembered for as being the tag team champions there multiple times against the Heavenly Bodies and other tag teams as well. But their biggest rivalry, of course, was the Midnight Express. And who can forget those famous matches back in those days? But I'm telling you right now, the Rock and Roll Express, another decorated tag team champions. Man, they were really good back in their day. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this podcast. A little something different, but I wanted to cover tag teams that held championships in multiple organizations. And it's unbelievable looking at teams like the Rock and Roll Express that held tag team titles all over the place. Teams like the Road Warriors who held them all over the world. We'll do more of these. I enjoy doing this stuff. I really enjoy doing the research and looking back. There's a lot of things I do remember, a lot of things I didn't know, but I'll share all the knowledge that I can with you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And until next time, God bless. See you soon.